Welcome to the Overdrive Outdoors podcast.
Your source for everything outdoors.
Let's kick it into overdrive.
Overdrive Outdoors podcast brought to you by Predator Hunter Outdoors. Whether you are new to predator hunting or looking to upgrade your equipment, Predator Hunter Outdoors will have you hunting after the sun goes down. Carrying a full line of lights, night vision, and thermal optics, along with tripods, calls, mounting systems, and more, check them out at www.predatorhunteroutdoors.com or on Facebook at Predator Hunter Outdoors. Use promo code OVERDRIVE2021 for 20% off your order. Want to lengthen your time in the field and shorten your scouting time? Not only does the HuntWise app show you property boundaries, landowners' names, and in some cases even their phone number, but using the app will show you the wind direction on the map of the place you want to hunt. And the HuntCast feature shows peak movement times for various species, including predators. Get the HuntWise app at www.huntwise.com, the Google Play Store, or the Apple App Store, for only $59.99 a year for Pro or $119.99 a year for Elite. Use promo code OVERDRIVE20 for 20% off an annual membership. All right, good evening, everybody. This is Kevin Rought, and tonight we have a special guest with us, Mr. Randy Budde, also known as the Farmer's Hitman. How you doing tonight, Randy?
Pretty good. How about you?
It's been a busy day, but it's good now. Now I finally can relax for a little bit, but up until now it's just been one of those real hectic days. At least it's not snowing yet.
No.
Well, I wouldn't mind a little bit of snow.
Yeah, I'm not ready for that.
I would like it if it stayed cold enough for good ice and we had like 6 inches of snow all winter. I'd be happy.
Yeah, that'd be all right if we didn't get no more than that.
Right. That's a problem though, is we usually get more than that.
6 or 8 inches would be nice. It'd be enough to
Good
get
track
around,
and
look
snow.
for tracks of the snowmobile.
Yeah. You snowmobile that little bit of snow?
Oh, 6 or 8 inches? Yeah.
I always thought you liked a little bit more than that. Well, some guys I know, they'll go out if you can get a trace.
I don't go ride the snowmobile just for the fun of riding it. I use it to go look for tracks. So
yeah.
That
season's coming up soon. I heard we were supposed to get snow this week.
Oh, really?
They got snow in the UP today.
I see that. I see a picture of it. I don't think there was much accumulation.
Brian Baker, who was north of where we were at up there, he posted a picture today, and it looked like there was probably an inch or two.
Oh, I'd seen a picture. I think it was from Sault Ste. Marie.
Okay.
It looked like just a little skiff on the ground.
I asked Kevin Stevenson if his folks had any up at his place, but he hadn't talked to him yet. But I don't know. The weather forecast I looked at today said it was supposed to be like 30s, 40s up until this weekend. That's going to jump back up to like 53 this weekend. So
I could do without that wind.
Oh yeah, this weekend wasn't too bad.
No.
So what I'd like to do is talk to you a little bit about your background. So you guys always grew up hunting and fishing, right?
Oh yeah. My brother Joe and I, we started out hunting with BB guns, and
that's
about all we had to do.
Back then, was it a Red Ryder or was it? Did you have a preference?
I never had a Red Ryder. I usually had the cheaper one. I did have one of the pump daisies. You remember the pump daisy?
The more you pump them, the stronger they got?
No. These here had the handle clear up by the end of the barrel.
Oh, yeah. Just like a cocking type deal?
Yep.
Okay.
I had one of them, and then I did have some lever action ones, but I don't think I ever had a Red Ryder. But then we graduated to the pump up ones, which them were a big improvement. But,
I remember those.
But yeah, we tried to get the neighbor over there had a barn there, and the pigeons would go in that barn, and that was kind of our big game there. But the pigeons were pretty wise. They were pretty hard to get a shot at. It was like a trophy whenever we could get luck into one of them pigeons.
Of course, probably a bunch of chipmunks and everything else too, right?
Yeah, I don't remember many chipmunks, few
No.
red squirrels around, but then there used to be a creek across the road too that had trout in it. So we spent a lot of time over there trying to catch them trout, brook trout.
Hmm. Now, it was the same with your whole family? Everyone was pretty much involved in it?
Um, yeah, no, Dad, he worked quite a bit of overtime. He worked at Gerber's, and so Dad was never a real big hunter.
Okay.
He liked to bird hunt some, but and then later on he did get into deer hunting, but he was never really a big hunter.
Was that upland birds or waterfowl?
Yeah,
or-
partridge.
Okay.
He used to duck hunt too. We did actually, when we were teenagers, we done a fair amount of duck hunting with Dad. There wasn't a lot of ducks around back then around our area, and you seldom ever seen any geese. But yeah, Dad used to like to duck hunt. And we did do some duck hunting, but then yeah, I think I started bow hunting when I was 16, and we got into bow hunting, and that kind of took care of the duck hunting then. So we were really heavy into bow hunting for quite a few years.
And if I remember right, going off the bow hunting thing, you actually shot professional?
Well, yeah, I used to shoot a lot of archery tournaments. We started out shooting indoors and then outdoor target tournaments, but then we really got heavy into the 3D tournaments, and we'd shoot the Triple Crown shoots. And
What's a triple crown shoot?
that's 3 big shoots. One of them used to be in Bedford, Indiana, and one was in Nelsonville, Ohio, and the other was in Erie, Pennsylvania. And anybody that thought they were good with the bow and arrow usually shot at them. There'd be over 2,000 shooters
Really?
at them. Yeah.
Why, babe, that was some stiff competition too.
Yeah, it was. And them were 3D targets. The first year that we shot, the targets could be out to about 60 yards, but then a year or two later, they made it so only about 50 yards maximum. So you walk, it's just like a regular 3D tournament today. You walk down the path and then you touch the stake and you guess the distance. I think they might have changed that now. I think maybe you can use range finders now, but back then you couldn't talk to anybody in your group about the range or anything like that. You had to guess the range and take your shot.
So how did they actually score that? Did they have scoring rings on the 3D targets?
Yep. On the animal target, like kind of, it wouldn't really be a heart shot. It was about like on a deer, it'd probably be about a 4-inch circle in the center of the lung that would be a 10, and then a lung hit would be an 8, and then a body hit would be a 5, and a miss would be a 0.
So did they score it on just the target, or they do it on time too?
Nope, just a target. You shoot one arrow at each target.
Oh, okay.
And then you walk to the next one.
Were those like an elimination style then? I mean, did you
No.
shoot more than once, or did you get one chance through?
You shot one target once.
Okay.
And that was it.
Okay.
And then usually, I can't remember. I think it seemed like you shot 60 targets a day.
Pretty good amount of shooting.
Yeah, I could be wrong. It might have been 30 targets one day and then 30 the next, and then your score.
So when you first started shooting bow, I'm assuming you were using recurve?
Actually, my first hunting bow was, yes, a recurve. I had a Herder's recurve. I remember it cost $23, brand new from Herder's. It was actually pretty nice recurve, 45 pound. Yep.
Those are nice.
It was actually pretty decent bow. I still got it.
Really?
Oh yeah. Yep.
Have you looked up how much that thing's worth?
No, I haven't.
So I know some of those old longbows are worth some pretty good money now.
I'll bet I could get $23 out of it.
Were you shooting cedar shafts back then?
Yep, cedar arrows. Yep.
Okay.
And the old Zwicky broadhead.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, so I'm assuming you probably shot instinctual back then.
No, actually, I started right out with sights.
Really?
Yeah. no peep sight, but a pin sight
Okay.
on it. But then I only used that bow a couple years, and then compounds were starting to be fairly common. And my first compound was a bear whitetail,
Okay.
6 pulley.
Hmm.
And then I hunted with that for a year or two, and then I bought a bear Alaskan, which was kind of one of the higher end bows back then.
You ever get a chance to meet Fred Bear?
Nope. I went to his museum it used to be up at Gaylord.
Oh, okay.
Not Gaylord.
Claire?
The town just on this side of there.
Yeah.
Grayling.
Oh, Grayling. Okay.
Yeah.
So
but then they've moved quite a few years ago. They moved it to Florida.
okay. So you went into compounds, you were shooting bear, and we were talking a little bit ago, and you said you still do shoot a bow occasionally, but now when you hunt, you primarily use a crossbow.
Yeah. Yep. When crossbows become legal for us old guys, I went to that. And the first year or two, only had to be over 50, I think, to shoot them or use a crossbow. But it's just so much easier. Don't take no practice or anything. Accuracy ain't really shooting offhand. Ain't really that much better on the crossbow, but it's a lot more movement, less movement
Right.
when it comes time to shoot the animal. So that's a big advantage.
So what kind of compound bow do you have now that you shoot?
My last compound was it's been so long since I've really been into it. It's Bowtech.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But I used to shoot Dartons.
Mhm.
In the 3D tournaments, I shot for Darton a few years, for Darton archery, and that's what I always shot.
And then
was the Darton bows.
and then the crossbow you have now, as you were saying earlier, is a Excalibur.
Yep, Excalibur. Yep.
And then that's what you just got deer with recently, right?
Yep. Actually, I've got 2 Excaliburs. My first one was the bigger, wider model, and then they come out with a micro here. I don't know, it's been quite a few years ago now, and the micro is real small and narrow, and that's what I got now. I still got the other one too. But,
Okay.
they're pretty simple. They're very accurate with the rest.
You use a scope on it or red dot?
Yep. It has scope. They have scopes on it. Yep.
The only crossbow I have right now is a PSE that's up there on my wall, and that can only use pins. It's up there behind that coyote and the bear hide.
Yeah.
And I bought that. I think I was still in high school when I bought that.
Oh yeah.
And that thing will still shoot fine. I mean, that's the old school PSE for me anyway, was decent. And now I've heard PSE isn't quite as good.
Yeah, I don't know much about archery anymore. I've been out of it for quite a few years now. At one point there, I actually sold archery stuff out of the garage. But anymore, I've only bow hunted 3 times this year, and I shot that 8-point on the 3rd time out, and I haven't been out since.
So let's stay in archery for a bit. What animals have you hunted with your bow? Because I know you've done a lot of hunting and all over the place.
Well, I've shot pigs down in Tennessee with a bow. I moose hunted with a bow, but I had no success at moose hunting with a bow. And I've killed elk with a bow, mule deer, bear, and a lot of whitetails.
Okay. So then obviously, I mean, you start off with BB guns, then you start archery, then you got into probably small game hunting next.
Well, no, actually, when we were a kid growing up, we started small game hunting when we were 12. Back then, you had to be 12 to small game hunt, and then started rifle hunting at 14. And then, like I said before, I was 16 when I started bow hunting.
Okay.
And yeah, we did when I was a kid. I did some waterfall hunting with my dad too, but we pretty much hunted everything.
Do a lot of squirrel hunting?
Yeah, back when I used to squirrel hunt quite a bit.
Did you use 22 or shotgun?
22.
Did you?
Yeah.
It's funny because I was watching. You ever watch Meat Eater with Steve
Oh, yeah.
Ranella? I watched an episode the other night, and he traveled down to Ozarks, I think it was, and they went squirrel hunting, and there was snow on the ground. And him and the guy he was hunting with kind of got into a little bit of a, I don't know, almost like an argument because Steve Ranella was using a 22, and the guys down there use nothing but shotgun. And Steve Ranella, who actually was from right around here, said, "Yeah," he says, "my dad wouldn't let us use a shotgun." He said, "If we brought home a squirrel that was shot with a shotgun, he wouldn't even do anything with it because they ate him." So he said it was 22 only, and that's all he ever squirrel hunted with. I remember my dad always, I started off, I think, with a 20 gauge, but he really tried to push me towards a 22 just because, you don't like the shot in your meat. And that's one of the things the guy said to Ranella was, "Oh, we just want to get the squirrels in there." And Steve made a comment about, "Well, have you ever broken off any teeth on a squirrel shot with a 22? He says, "Not likely."
Actually, the 22 that I like to use was a Ruger 1022 that I bought brand new for $45.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Everybody has to have a 1022.
Yeah, I
though.
still got it. I don't never shoot it.
Only one?
I still have it. Yeah, I only have the one. But yeah, I paid $45 for it brand new. But I have squirrel hunted some with a 17 HMR revolver.
Okay.
And then I guess about the last times I squirrel hunted has been with one of the PCP air rifles.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah.
Which caliber did you use for that?
I think I used my 25 caliber.
25?
Um,
That'd be a lot of fun. So then from small game, I know you used to shoot competitively as well, right?
with the bow
Oh,
and
I
the
mean, with a
rifle.
gun. Now,
Yep.
was it just bench rest?
No, I started out back when I was a teenager. We used to shoot there at Fox Lake, and that was seemed like we shot prone and offhand. I think, yeah, just prone and offhand, I believe.
Now, was that silhouette shooting or was
No,
it
it was target.
target? Okay.
It, it it seemed like the rules were you could shoot at 100 yards with open sights, or you could shoot it seemed like it was 150 yards with a scope.
Okay.
But then, yeah, later on, well, then too, we growing up, my dad used to go to these turkey shoots. They'd have a lot of turkey shoots where before we were big enough to shoot, they had turkey shoots like at different places, and they would shoot targets. They'd have all different kinds of shoots. Some of them they'd shoot at targets, 5-shot groups, and some of them they would shoot a shotgun at a certain range, and they put a little X in the middle of the bullseye, and whoever got one shot closest to the X would win the chicken or turkey or whatever. And I remember at one of the turkey shoots, which my younger brother Joe and we were too little to shoot back then, but I remember they had a paint can, a gallon paint can, and a string tied to it. Well, Dad ended up buying this 1886 Winchester, which I still have that gun. It was made in 1892, and he at first he cut the bullet off with a hacksaw, so it was flat in front.
Okay.
And him and my older brother, they would cut that string into every shot. That they'd put that paint can hanging from that string about 25 yards, and they'd shoot offhand. But yeah, they'd cut that string almost every shot. Well, then Dad figured out that you just load the bullet in there backwards, and you still had that flat front. But they got so that they'd only let that gun win one time, and then that gun was all done for the day.
They were disqualified after that. Huh?
But then later on, they kind of stopped those turkey shoots, but then they went to these ones where they put the turkey behind the sandbank and you shoot at the turkey's head.
Yep.
And I remember Joe and we were too small to set at the bench and shoot, so we'd have to stand up at the bench and shoot at the turkey's head. It was Dad always had accurate rifles. He was always into bench rest shooting as long as I can remember. and always loaded our own shells, and we always had accurate rifles, and usually Joe and I would get the turkey in the head first shot, and then later on, they kind of started going to I think they're quarter sticks of dynamite,
Mm-hmm.
and then they'd shoot balloons too. Usually the turkey's head or the dynamite, it seems like, was out there about 150 yards.
They used to do that out at Fox Lake, and they did the same thing. They actually had a pit out there, and they would put the turkey down in there and basically tie its leg down. And if you shot the turkey in the head, you got the turkey. And if I remember right, it was at like 160 yards, 150 yards, and you could use no more than a 6-power scope.
Yeah, I think it was 4 power back when we did
Was
it,
it?
but yeah, there was a restriction on the scope. Yep, I'm pretty sure it was 4 power then. But a lot of them people, they would, all you had to do is draw blood. A lot of people would shoot in the sandbank, try to sandblast it, but or maybe they're just that bad a shot. I don't know. Of course, at them shoots, there was a lot of drinking going on there too. So if you missed, then it would go through. Everybody would get to shoot. Of course, after you hit your turkey, you're all done.
Right.
But for the people that missed, then they'd have to go back through the whole line again, and you shoot again.
Yeah. I know at Fox Lake, they had some people complain about shooting live animals, and they quit doing that, and they went to a target shoot, and you win a frozen turkey. So, yeah, the bleeding hearts have to get involved in everything, don't they?
Oh yeah.
So I take it from growing up with your dad doing bench rest, is that what got you into it?
Yeah. Then I shot bench rest with Dad. We did that quite a few years. That's a tough game. You think bench rest, there ain't nothing to it, but that reading that wind and that mirage, that's bad, because they shoot in bench rest, you shoot 5-shot groups. And usually if the weather is really good, and this has been a lot of years ago, so they're probably better yet now, but usually they would average around 2/10 for that. That's 5-shot groups.
Mm-hmm.
So that means every group is 2/10 of an inch or smaller, 5 shots at 100 yards, and then of course they're bigger than that at 200 yards. A shoot consisted of 5-shot groups at 100 and 5-shot groups at 200.
Mm-hmm.
And that usually, it took 2 days.
Did you shoot like competitions all over with that, like you did with archery?
I have shot other places. I did shoot 100 bench rest shoot. 100 bench rest is a little bit different. 100 bench rest is for score, and you had to have the cartridge had to hold as much powder as a 30-30, and it had to be 24 caliber or larger. And there's it was about a 1/2-inch bullseye that you shot at 100 yards. You shot five shots at each target, and then 5 targets. And and on the bench rest for the group, there's a moving backer behind your target that's constantly moving. And so that when they pull the targets, that backer goes with your target, and
show you how many
that
shots
way,
actually
it'll
hit.
show 5 shots strung right out on that backer to make sure. And if you don't have 5 shots in your backer, for every shot that's missing, they add 1 inch onto your group. So if you're done.
Yeah, one year out.
Yep.
So in the hunter class, you said 25 caliber bigger?
24
bigger.
And it had to hold as much powder as a 30-30. And the funny thing is this would have been back in the early to mid 80s. And they used to shoot they called it, let's see what they call that. I'll think of it later, but it's a 22-250 case with the shoulder blown out, and it's nicked out to 240 or to 243. That it's actually almost the identical case of a 6mm Creedmoor.
Really?
Yeah. That was a fairly popular hunter bench rest cartridge around here back then. I shot 308.
Okay, that's what I was gonna ask, is what your preferred cartridge
Yeah, I
was.
use a 308. It gives you a little better line cutter. All you had to do is cut the line to get to 10.
Mhm.
Um,
Then for your regular bench rest, not the hunter class, what was your preferred
oh, that's dominated by
6
six
PPC?
PPCs. Yeah, 6 PPC holds every 100 and 200 yard record, bench rest record there is. That is an amazing caliber there.
Now, I mean, you and I talk ballistics quite a bit. So for bench rest shooting the 6 PPC, was there a particular weight range of bullets that really shined in those?
Yeah, they use you. A few people use like 62 grain, but 68 grain were probably the most popular. And they used a lot of burger bullets, but a lot of the bench rest guys they made their own bullets too.
Did you ever do that?
No, I didn't. Nope. I always bought burger bullets. Actually, I shot. It was in Ohio, the Nationals. I had Walt Berger. He brought me a bunch of bullets there, and I just got them from him there. And then I have shot a hunter bench rest shoot down in St. Louis, Missouri too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And those, I know that's some stiff competition in those too. I mean, when you
Oh,
get
yeah.
when you get into any of those competitions, you figure if you have to travel for it, there's going to be some good competition.
Yeah, it's amazing the competition in the bench rest shooting, because even if you win, you only win a plaque.
Mhm.
So it ain't like you're winning money. Usually when there's money involved, like I've been into drag racing and then to my archery shooting, we used to shoot for money at a lot of the archery shoots, and they would have a trophy class and then there's the money class. Well, the money class, that was a whole different type of shooter in that money class compared to the trophy class.
Mhm. So now when you were shooting bench rest, were you one of the guys that built your own rifles, or were you using rifles built by somebody else?
No, them were the rifles I used were built by Fred Sinclair.
Yep.
Fred Sinclair. Now actually, I think Brownells
Yep.
bought them out. Sinclair International. But yeah, my rifles were built by Fred Sinclair.
Okay. Now when
there is some of the shooters that's got the lathes and
yeah,
the equipment that does build their own.
going back to that in terms of the rifles, one thing, if you've never experienced bench rest before, I think probably what percentage of it would you say is mechanical in the gun versus how much of it is your load development versus how much is, reading the wind and everything? You feel it's pretty equal? Because
Well, the gun has got to be extremely accurate. I
Yeah.
mean, that gun's got to be able to put one bullet right on top of the other one at 100 yards.
Mhm.
On a good calm day, a 1/4 inch group, if you shoot 5 1/4 inch groups, you're not going to win on a good day, because the winners are going to be down around 2/10.
Uh-huh.
And so you need a really good rifle, and you're going to have to get the load to do it with. But reading that wind is, it only takes one bad bullet.
Right.
One bad bullet can sell the whole farm for you.
I think the best story I've ever read on that, where they really talked about the wind in terms of shooting, was actually the book about Carlos Hathcock. And he shot the 1,000-yard competitions. And that's one of the things in the book that they really talked about was, watching the wind flags, waiting for it to drop, watching what it's doing, everything, then watching mirage. And there's a lot to it that I think the average Joe Blow doesn't understand. I mean, you've probably heard it too. You have these guys out there say, "Oh, this will shoot a quarter at 1,000 yards all day long," and I usually shake my head at those people because I don't believe it.
Yeah, when somebody, like on internet, they posted a shoot 1/2 inch groups all day long, you automatically know they're lying.
Right.
Because it takes pretty good, a bench rest rifle. Yeah, a bench.
And if you're
rest
shooting in a vacuum,
PPC, well, a bench rest rifle with in a 6 PPC, it probably will. I mean, a 1/2 inch group is a big group for it. But
Yeah.
these hunting rifles,
right,
it don't happen.
Right.
I mean, you might shoot one half-inch group, but the next one might be an inch too.
And when it comes to the rifles, I mean, mechanically speaking, and in terms of your loads, with the consistency, I think that part it's possible a whole lot more than the shooters and the shooter's ability to read the wind and the mirage and
Yeah.
everything else.
Yeah, the wind is going to bother you a lot worse farther away, like say at 1,000-yard bench rest shooting.
Mm-hmm.
But if it blows your bullet off a half-inch at 100 yards, you're all done.
Yeah.
Especially if it's your first shot, then you can chase that first one and you might be able to save it. But if it's your second shot and it blows it a half-inch over, you're all done.
So,
And
to interrupt for a second, in bench rest, your score and everything is actually by group size, not necessarily hitting a target.
in light and heavy varmint bench rest, yes, they go by group.
Okay.
There'll be 2 bullseyes on a target, and the bottom target will be a sighter. You can go down to that sighter anytime you want to. They give you a time. I don't remember how long you got to shoot, but you can shoot as many at that sighter as you want to. But then the top target, that is for your group.
Okay.
And it's just, there's a fairly big square on there. It's probably 3 by 4 inches or something. That group can be any place in there.
I've seen quite a few of those targets out at Holton because I used to be a member out there, and I'd go out there and I'd see the targets and everything set up all the time. So I know what you're talking about. I've never shot that. Bench rest, I've looked at a lot of really cool looking bench rest rifles, but I've never shot one.
Yeah, if you're going to show up at one of them bench rest shoots with a factory rifle, they'll let you shoot, but figure on taking up the bottom spot.
Right. So you started off with archery, BB guns, small game hunting. Obviously, I know you've hunted a lot of bigger animals too. What all have you hunted with rifle?
Oh, I've shot moose with a rifle, mule deer, antelope, bear. That's about all well, we went to Louisiana and shot them pigs.
Mm-hmm.
That's about all I can really think of.
Now, you've said you've hunted out of the country before too, right?
Oh yeah, whitetails in Saskatchewan. I hunted in Saskatchewan 4 or 5 times, and I hunted a couple times in Northwest Ontario, deer hunting.
Mm-hmm.
And then we used to go to Ontario bear hunting. I've shot bear there with a bow and muzzleloader and a rifle.
Is the bear hunting much different up there than it is here?
We always hunted in the spring, and I guess that's kind of how I learned to bait bear, because when we hunted up there, we first started going up there, it cost us $300 a piece a week, and they had a camp set up for us, and they had the baits already started. And then we got there, they showed us where the baits are, and they furnished us with bait, and then we run the baits every day. It was a fun hunt, and $300, it's quite the deal. It was just you just stayed in the tent, a wall tent, but it was pretty comfortable.
You've probably seen a good variety of wildlife up there too, didn't you?
Yeah, it was a good experience. You didn't have to have a guide back then to hunt up there, and so that kept the prices down low, because you could just go up there on your own if you wanted to.
Really?
Yeah, and the bear license back then, I think was like $20 or something like that. And then that was the export fee was actually more than the license, but it was a good deal.
That was to bring your bear back?
Yep.
Really?
And that was always a spring hunt. We usually hunted the first week of June.
Mm-hmm.
The black flies was quite an experience.
Well, I bet. I mean, I've seen them when they're bad up in the UP, so I imagine further north they probably don't get any better.
Oh, it was unreal.
Really?
Yep. Yeah, it was bad.
Hmm.
But that was springtime bear hunting. The bear I'd have to say the average size bear is about like what we see in the UP.
Okay.
Of course, they're a little smaller in the spring. They don't haven't put on no weight yet.
Yeah, I didn't have 6 inches of fat on them like the ones from this year.
No.
So what other states have you hunted in? I know you've been down to Louisiana, obviously, but you
Um,
mentioned like mule deer and elk.
yeah, that was Wyoming.
Okay.
Well, elk. I always hunted elk with the bow and arrow,
Hmm.
and that was in Colorado.
Okay.
Um, and then out west, I only hunted Wyoming. I shot a mule deer there and an antelope. And let's see, hunted Saskatchewan, like I said, 4 or 5 times. That's very good hunting. In Saskatchewan, it was great hunting. And then we hunted the Indian land,
Mhm.
and so that had different rules than what the other land had. But it's cold.
Oh, yeah.
It, a lot of time we were hunting in shacks, but they weren't very good shacks. And it might be 5 below when he drops you off before daylight, and it might get up to 0 that day, but it's back to 5 below when they come pick you up after dark. But
Oh,
you never know what you're going to see. I mean,
right.
so we've seen moose there and elk, and
Did you see a lot of wolves up there?
actually where we were at, it was kind of below where the wolves were. I guess there might have been a few around there, but there was a lot of coyotes. We've seen a lot of coyotes, and on public land in Saskatchewan, you can't shoot coyote. A non-resident can't shoot coyotes,
Really?
but on Indian land, and it's okay
That's kind of
because
different.
they have their own rules.
Okay.
But yeah, a lot of coyotes up there. I'd like to go up there coyote hunt.
I bet you that'd be a blast.
But
Now up there, I don't know if you know or not, but did they use a lot of baiting? 'Cause I know they like to bait for wolves up there. Did
For
they
the
bait
deer?
Did they bait for coyotes?
they don't hunt no coyote. I don't think the Indians hunt coyotes
No.
up there much, if any. They have bait for the deer, but yeah, they kind of thought that it was funny that we'd shoot coyotes when we're out deer hunting. But
I bet you they're real fluffy up there. I mean, if the fur market's good, you'd probably do pretty good on those coyotes, I would
yeah,
think.
well, after you shoot them with a deer rifle,
Yeah, that kind of ruins the value a little
yeah,
bit.
they got a pretty big hole usually on the exit. But
Right.
um, it was a unique experience. It was a good hunt, but it's cold.
Now you trap too, right? Or used to?
Not too much. My dad always trapped.
Okay.
Back when he trapped, there wasn't no coyote around,
Mhm.
but they had a bounty on the fox, and I almost think they paid $5 for a fox, which $5 back then to fill your gas tank up.
Mhm.
But yeah, I used to trap fox and mink, coon,
Mhm.
but of course mink back then were a big male mink would bring about $20 back then.
And that was a good money back
Yeah,
then.
and that would have been like back in around 64, 65. Yeah, that was pretty good money back then.
Mhm.
But even $5 for a fox, and you didn't even have to do nothing with it. You take it to the sheriff's department and get the bounty.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. Do you ever remember them having a bounty on coyotes in Michigan?
I don't ever remember that, but
I know they have in other states, and I think they still do in some states.
I
out
don't know.
west.
I don't think Michigan had one, but
No.
I'm not sure. Like in my area, there wasn't no coyote. The first coyotes I ever seen around there was in the early to mid '80s.
Mhm.
So they weren't really native to this area.
Gotcha. And you went moose hunting in Saskatchewan too, right?
I shot a moose up there. Yeah. Hunting, like I said, hunting with the Indians there. Yeah, you could shoot moose or elk or pretty much anything if you want to buy the tag for it. Yeah, I shot a moose up there. And then I moose hunted in well, my first moose hunt was in 1981 in Ontario, and I shot a 55-inch bull up there, which that's a pretty big bull for Ontario. We drove to Thunder Bay, Ontario, which is on the north shore of Lake Superior, and then we flew 230 air miles north and landed on a lake, or land. Well, actually, we landed in Indian village up there. There was 800 people lived there, and there was no roads to this town. The nearest road was, I think, 80 miles away. No railroad tracks. The only way to get there was by plane. They had a gravel landing strip. And we flew in there, and then we flew. That was called Fort Hope, but they've changed the name, something else now. But anyway, then we flew there on a bush plane out on the lake. It was a very good hunt. My older brother and I killed a 55-inch bull, and he killed a 38-inch bull.
Nice.
And then my son-in-law and we went to Newfoundland here a few years ago.
Oh, really?
And moose hunting. And yeah, I killed the moose there run a little smaller. It was I believe the one I shot was 38 inches, the biggest one that we killed in that camp. There was 6 or 8 guys in that camp. And my son-in-law killed a little spike bull moose.
Mm-hmm.
But I would like to go back there sometime, not to that outfitter, but back to Newfoundland moose hunting. Really, really friendly and nice people.
What's the terrain like up there?
It's a lot of I guess you'd call it like muskeg. It's real spongy. Okay. And we seen caribou, and I guess we didn't see, the only moose I seen was the one I killed. But they got one of the largest moose populations of any place in the world. Yeah. Newfoundland actually is it's an island, and it's like 200 miles across. It's a nice place.
Is the temperature kind of like, I mean, it's cold up there too, right?
Yeah, it's not too bad. It's kind of it's kind of off from Maine out there, so it's not. It wasn't cold like it was in Saskatchewan. Of course, when we hunted in Saskatchewan, it was a little later in the year.
I was gonna say, what time of year do they have moose hunts there?
You know what? I can't remember if it was September or October. I almost think it was in September.
Early fall.
Yeah, and when we were hunting in Saskatchewan for deer, it was late November.
Okay.
Early December.
So then, when did you really start getting into coyote hunting?
Well, I've coyote hunted since actually probably in the early mid 80s. We used to go fox, tried to call in a fox. Never had no success at it, but actually might even have been before that. Might have been late 70s.
Okay.
But then just do it, occasional. And the one time I actually called in a coyote, I don't know when that was. It was probably maybe in the early 90s. I went out there. There was a Christmas tree plantation there right by my house, and I'd blown on that call numerous times, never called nothing in. So I got my gun hanging from the sling in the tree, and I'm standing in this tree, standing at the base of this tree, and my gun's hanging up there. I'm blowing on this call, and I couldn't believe it. This coyote comes running out of this Christmas tree plantation, running right at me, and I'm fumbling around trying to grab my gun, and it turned and ran around. It kind of run around me there, and I never even got a shot at it. I couldn't believe it. I seen one, but then later on, it kept trying, and we call one in every once in a while and kill it. But then when they made it legal to use center fires after dark, that's when I started getting serious at it. I think we all did.
Yep.
I don't really like hunting with a rimfire that much, so
don't blame you.
But so I don't know when that was. It had to be around 17, 16.
Yeah, it's probably like 3 or 4 years ago now.
Well, it's probably been more than that. Well,
is it?
Yeah. Well,
something like that.
17 would be 5 years ago. So
but I remember too, because you and I, we worked together for quite a while. You used to go to, where'd you go? You went somewhere Oklahoma to coyote hunt?
Oh yeah, we used to. My brother Joe and I, we used to go down. We went quite a few years. We went down to Oklahoma coyote hunting.
And that was using a guide down there?
Yeah, he has a bunch of deer hunting property, and he guides for deer. And yeah, we would go with him. I think we were about the only coyote hunters he had, but yeah, we just go with him. And the first few years we went down there, it was pretty good. I mean, for us in here in Michigan, you know, where you might look quite a bit to find a coyote track, but down there, every place you get out of the truck, there would be coyote tracks. And of course, they weren't easy to call in, but I think they must have a lot of pressure, because last time we were down there, we didn't have much luck calling any in the daylight at all. It just the tracks and everything, they're there, but I think they're getting a lot of pressure.
Reminded you of hunting them at home in the daylight.
Yep, it was.
So then when you first got involved in nighttime hunting, yeah, I mean, what really drew you to nighttime hunting?
When they made it legal with the center fires, of course, that was a learning experience for all of us. You know, you're used to hiding. When you're hunting in the daylight, you're used to kind of hiding back in the brush, or so you can't be seen. And then I guess it when you're used to that, it's pretty hard to just walk right out in the middle of a field, you know. And I tried it just a little bit with a light, and I didn't really like that. My first nighttime setup was I had some of the ATN binoculars and then the X-Sight 2, and it actually worked. I killed coyotes, but that scanning with them, that night vision, is not near as good as scanning with that thermal scanner. I think the most important thing for nighttime coyote hunting is that scanner. You know, I think it would work fine to have just a red light on your scope and see them with that scanner, and then shoot them with the red light. Yeah, it's not near as good as having a thermal scope, but I mean, if I could either have a thermal scanner or a thermal scope, but not both, I would take the scanner.
Yep.
What do you feel about that?
I agree completely. I think the scanner is 100% the biggest game changer for nighttime hunting. And actually, I mean, I use it in the daytime from time to time too. And there's been times where there was a coyote. The only reason I seen it was there in the daytime was because I had the thermal. But at nighttime, it's absolutely. I mean, there's so much more that you see that you don't see with anything else.
Yeah.
And it's pretty crazy. It's impressive.
Yeah.
It's funny though, because we were talking about, the progression, like you started with lights and that, didn't do that for very long, and talking about going out in an open field. I remember one time when we first started, we were using lights, obviously. And I remember there's actually a couple other guys that got into the thermal game way before we did. And they were telling us, oh yeah, just go out. And we've seen other guys on Facebook too. They'd go out on a tripod, middle of a field. And we're thinking to myself, I know Josh and I thought about this, talked about it. We're like, man, I don't think I'd ever just stand out in the open. Now look at us. I mean, that's pretty much what we do all the time.
Yeah.
There's a progression there that, you think back to when you first started and you're like, oh, I'd never do that. Now you're doing it all the time.
Yeah, but I started out setting down and just shooting sticks. So, it's I guess never dawned on me to just stand out there, and I had the same tripod I use today. I've had that tripod for years, but to think about, I never thought about just carrying that thing out and setting it in the middle of the field and stand out there. But
it's a whole lot more comfortable.
It is. It's not hunting like that you normally do. Recently I had a guy message me, and he says, "Are you just standing out in the field?" And I don't remember what state this guy was from, but he was a nighttime hunter. He had a thermal. He had thermal scanner and thermal scope. And I said, "Yeah, I'm just standing out there." And he says, you standing by the edge of the woods? I said, no, I get right out in the, try to get right out a couple 100 yards out in the field.
Yeah.
And he said, they don't see. And the guy, I could tell the guy was thinking, this guy's crazy. You don't know what he's talking about. Well, then he got back with me and he says, I stood out there in the field and the coyote could run right out by me.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I remember too, before I started doing a lot of nighttime hunting, I primarily hunted in the daytime. And going back to talking about the shooting sticks, I started off, I was doing all my shooting offhand. I would sit on the ground, get in some cover, call, coyotes would come in, and I would shoot at them. I'd shoot a few, and I'd shoot at more of them. But what really got me to switch to shooting sticks was I went 0 for 10 one summer, or early season, whatever it was, daylight, called 10 in a row, missed all 10 of them. And I'm like, this sucks. So I went out and bought some shooting sticks, did better with that. And in the daytime now, I'll still use shooting sticks, sit on the ground, use shooting sticks. But then I switched after that, upgraded to a tripod setup. And my first tripod setup I bought off eBay or Amazon. It was a cheap camera tripod, but I was thinking, man, this is awesome now. And it worked good. And then, it was still a little bit wobbly, so I ended up upgrading to a better tripod. And I've been through like 3 or 4 different ones now, and it's amazing. One, there's a learning curve to shooting off a tripod.
Yep.
And I mean, I just talked to a guy this week, and he just went out and bought a tripod and a scope and all that. And he's like, oh, I'm good. I'm going to sight it in. I'm going to go out hunting. I said, here's my piece of advice for you. Sight your gun in off a bench, make sure it's on, then shoot it off that tripod at the range before you take it out hunting. I said, because I've seen several times people get it, they get out there, they go out and they've never shot off a tripod and they can't hit squat. I think it's definitely a learning curve going from, one type of shooting to the other. You have to practice with it to be proficient.
Yeah. One thing a lot of people do wrong in their shooting, they don't concentrate on aiming.
Mhm.
They
Focus on the animal.
Yep, they get the crosshair on the animal and they jump all over the trigger, and that is the wrong thing to do. You got to concentrate on that aim. From day one, when like even back when I started deer hunting, that really made me mad when I would miss a deer or any animal that I shoot at and I miss it. That makes me mad. That once I take that shot at that animal, that animal's supposed to be dead.
Right.
And I guess that's one thing that's really drove me forever is I really hate misses.
Mhm.
and it ain't no better today than ever.
Right.
I mean, I don't like missing.
I mean, part of that is just you want to do well, but I mean, you came up shooting competitively and everything else, bench rest. I mean, you had a lot of that focus to start with, I would think.
The thing that actually the out of all the shooting that I did muzzleloader shooting too, and that muzzleloader shooting, that's almost all offhand. Little bit of cross stick shooting, but most of the muzzleloaders offhand. And I used to use a flintlock in muzzleloader competition.
I'll definitely have you work on your follow through.
That right there, that will teach you a lot right there, that flintlock, because on a good day, I think only go off about 75% of the time.
Right.
And that really teaches you a lot. But the thing that learned me to shooting the best was actually target archery, because target archery, that is all it's all offhand, and you're concentrating on the center of that bullseye. You're concentrating on holding that sight right in the middle of that bullseye, just as steady as you can. And with a bow and arrow is just like a rifle. If you're jerking that trigger, it will teach you to flinch.
Mhm.
And if you're a bow shooter, and every once in a while you might not shoot it, but you see your bow arm jerk off to the side and you jerk, that's a flinch. And that's because you're jerking that trigger on that release. And the way we shot target archery, you hold that pin in the center of that bullseye as steady as you can, and you just slowly keep squeezing on that release. And and that shot has got to be a surprise when it goes off. And that taught me more about shooting a gun than anything, is that target archery.
Now, for me, something parallel there, for me, it was when I really started getting into handgun shooting, because the emphasis from what I was taught was always focus on that front sight. Let your target blur a little bit, but make sure you can see that front sight good and you keep it on your target. And then watch your follow through after it. I mean, watch for that dip or the jerk or whatever, like you said, but so much of it was on the emphasis of that front sight and keeping it on your target. I crossed that over to rifle, and I feel I do okay. I'm getting better, but I feel I do okay. But I've really started more focusing, like you said, on those crosshairs, keeping them on the target, looking for your follow through. And even I think if you look at some of the videos from now versus back when I first started, even like especially on the follow through and keeping the scope on the animal if it did run.
I see a lot of improvement.
Yeah, because back then, you'd shoot, boom, the shot would go off, the scope would stay here, and the animal's off over here. Well, now most of the time when I make a shot, I'm still watching. If that animal's moving, my scope's right with it because I'm focusing on that crosshair and keeping on the animal.
If you squeeze the trigger on it don't matter if you're bow release, rifle, pistol, if you squeeze the trigger, the follow through is automatic because you don't know when that gun's going to go off. The follow through is automatically there. When the follow through is not there, you're jerking that trigger, and your subconscious mind knows that weapon's going to go off right now, and you're already trying to do something different. But I see a lot of videos on there where a lot of people have really improved. His shooting is really improved a lot, and I've seen it on your videos too. You guys are spending a lot more time aiming. A lot of times it used to be you'd see that crosshair on the jerk over on the animal and the gun would go off. Well, you're not aiming.
Right.
I mean, when that happens, you're seeing that crosshair on there and you're grabbing a handful of trigger.
Right.
And that's just not good.
Another thing that really helped me a lot too, and it's more recent, but was when we went hog hunting down in Louisiana. At least I'm used to around here, occasionally we'd get multiples on predators, but a lot of it's singles. You shoot one, hey, I got it, great. But when we went down to Louisiana, we're coming up on 20, 30 pigs in a field, and they're like, make your first shot count and then just get a bullet into any other one you can. And that, going back to the thermal, I mean, that's another great thing about thermal is on multiples or moving shots, that thermal just works so much better.
Yeah.
And I mean, even if you watch the video from when we went down there and hunted with Rougarou, I was using Shane's gun on the first night, and you could tell I wasn't used to it. But by the end of that weekend, my hit percentages went up. I was staying on the animals better. And I mean, I think that was a real eye opener and has helped me even in my coyote hunting now.
Oh yeah. The nice thing about thermal too is after the shot, I mean, you can see instantly after the shot, whereas the night vision, you're kind of in the dark,
right?
A few seconds after the shot, but with that thermal, boy, it's just right there. But for somebody starting out, obviously nighttime coyote hunting, that thermal rifle scope is not the best setup because it takes a little while to get so I can identify the animals.
Yep.
Whereas the night vision, it's a lot easier.
Yep, I agree completely. And that's advice I think we've given to a lot of people is when you're first starting out, get a thermal scanner, use a night vision scope, and make sure you have good positive ID on your animals. I mean, for guys out west, it might not be as big of a deal because I think they're a lot less likely to call them the neighbor's dog.
Yeah.
I mean, they're out in the boonies, there isn't going to be anything else, but especially around here and obviously other places too, it's very possible you could have the neighbor's German Shepherd come running in or something like that. And with thermal, unless you know how that animal moves and how it's reacting, you aren't going to be able to tell the difference.
Or around here, fox season, if fox season ain't open, it can be hard to tell a fox from a coyote.
Absolutely. and bobcats and everything
Yep, yep.
else.
As long as you got a thermal scanner, that night vision scope is not a, it's not hurting you that much,
Right.
really. I mean, on a running animal, yeah, the digital night vision is not as good on a running animal like thermal, but on a standing animal, it's especially within 200 yards, there ain't nothing wrong with that digital night vision.
Oh, yeah. Matter of fact, now that fox season is open, I've actually switched to my 204 over there, and that's what I have on that as a night vision, because one, that Grendel just tears fox up something fierce. And I would actually like to get a couple of nice hides on the wall. And with that Grendel, it ain't gonna work so well. That fox that I got here not too long ago, I didn't tell you the story about that one, but oh my gosh. So I'm calling this spot. He's had coyotes on camera. And I got a cornfield on my left. I'm in a pasture for his livestock, and the fence is in front of me, and I hung my collar on the fence. Past that, it's a little bit more of a field, and then it goes down into a swamp. On my right, there's a tree line that goes to an orchard, and behind me is his livestock barn. So I'm out there standing. There's one tree in that pasture, and it was full moon. So I'm standing out there just by that tree. It's a funny part of the story I'll get to later. There's like a burn barrel or something, a metal barrel right next to me. So anyway, I'm calling, and I think I've been playing a little bit of distress, and I'm scanning with a thermal, both ways. Wasn't seeing squat except some deer. And I remember I scanned off to the left, I think, and I came back, and all of a sudden there's a predator between me and the caller, and it's looking at the caller, and I just started to do a howl, and I stopped that howl right in the middle of the howl because that animal was right there. And I was, like I said, I'm looking, I have no idea where this thing came from. I was looking both ways.
It's amazing how they can get up on you.
And, I mean, like I said, he was like 30 yards in front of me, and the caller was 10 yards in front of him, and he's looking at the caller like, what the heck is that, And once I seen it, I looked at it, and I'm like, okay, that's a fox. And it turned around and looked at me. Of course, like I said, full moon, so I stopped. I waited, and then he turned back, looked at the collar again. And I went over, got behind the rifle, and I was kind of flustered. So I flubbed my first shot. I think I took hair off him, but I flubbed the first shot, and he ran off. And your reaction for most of your predator hunters when you have a running predator is to either bark or lip squeak or something like that. And surprisingly enough, a bark stopped that fox, and I leveled him with the next shot. But going back to the burn barrel, another thing that startled me is I shoot, I miss this fox, but my brass goes down inside that metal can and starts banging around. And it took me a second. I'm like, what the heck is that? And then I was like, okay, fox is running. Let's get back on the fox. Shot again. That brass went in the can too.
Was that 204?
No, that was my Grendel. That was kind of the point I was getting to. That Grendel just tears those foxes.
Yeah, it seems like everything does. I shot one with that 204. I only shot one fox with it, but it put probably a 50-cent size hole on the exit.
Yeah, I'd be happy with the 50-cent.
Yeah, yeah, that's a lot better than the other guns. But
right.
I was surprised it still put that big a hole. But that fox still run about close to 100 yards.
Really?
Lung shot. Yeah.
Wow.
I get something odd was happening been last week. The last time I went predator hunting. I don't know if it was Thursday or Wednesday, but anyway, I called in 3 bucks using den raid. Usually that den raid scares them deer out of the field, but I had 3 separate bucks come into den raid that night. Yeah,
like they get real close to the collar.
Well, they get I'd say they got 50 yards or so from me.
But they were curious about it.
They definitely came to it. I mean, the one was out in the field, and I was playing rabbit distress, and then I went to dinner, and he was over there feeding. I didn't know it was a buck because with the hard horns you don't see it in the thermal. Well, then I went to den raid, and all of a sudden here he starts coming this way, and he got within about 50 yards. I could see it. Then I could see that he had horns in the thermal, but I called in 3 bucks that night with den raid.
Makes you wonder if you should try it during the day.
I'm wondering about that. Maybe a guy ought to go out there and play den raid when he's bow hunting.
See, now of course in the spring you get all kinds of deer coming to like fawn distress.
Yep.
And I've actually had a lot of deer get really curious to baby cottontail. They
Yeah.
seem to really get drawn to that one, but I've never had one react to den raid before.
Usually den raid scares them.
Right.
But well, the does and stuff, they took off.
Hmm.
But the bucks, they were come up there. Must be they're looking for a fight or something.
Wow, that's
Um,
interesting.
I don't think I've ever had bucks come into den raid before, but that night, three separate
it was
ones.
working.
Yeah.
Wow. So I know you like to use the Icotech caller. Do you have any deer sounds on the Icotech?
Yes, it does. It does have some deer sounds on there.
Have you ever tried them for deer?
A little bit, not too much. I actually got one of the had them send me one of the GC 500s to use for deer hunting.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's, like I said before, I don't bow hunt a lot anymore. And that calling them deer, I think that's more a bow hunting type
Right.
thing. But I've called in deer with grunt calls before, so I know you can call them in.
Mm. I've tried it a little bit with my Fox Pro. I got a bunch of their deer sounds. There's like buck fights and doe estrus and all that, and I have never had a deer come into any of that yet. But I don't use it a lot. But the times I have, I've never had any luck with it. I would like to have it work, but
I back when I used to bow hunt a lot. I've seen them. You see a buck out there, you ain't got nothing to lose. You might as well blow that grunt call at him and see if he'll come.
Mhm.
And I've had success at it, but I've had a lot of them just ignore me too.
Right.
But of course, we probably have a lot of coyotes ignore us with them calls too.
Right.
But it will work. I know for a fact it will work.
So now you have several different rifles that you use throughout the year for predator season. You have 224 Valkyrie, you have your 6.5 Grendel, you have 6 Creedmoor. Don't you have a 6mm Creedmoor too? But
I do, but I have not shot no coyotes with it.
okay.
My main nighttime guns right now is
That new one, the 6.
well, right now I'm using the 224 Valkyrie because I'm
Okay.
selling the hide.
Okay.
And I'm really happy with my setup on that as far as not damaging the hides too much. I shot about 40 coyotes this year with that 6 SBC. And that does more. I really like that gun. It does more damage to the hide.
Okay.
Not as much as the Grendel does. And there for a while this summer, I was using my 6.5 Creedmoor with 130 grain tip Match King. That worked great. But that was hard on hides too.
So here's a question for you, and I've had people ask me before, what bullet do you recommend for fur friendly, which, anything can be destructive no matter what, but my two trains of thought are one of two things if you want to save fur. Either you get a light bullet that'll blow apart fast, or you get a heavy bullet that won't blow apart, that'll just penetrate through. That's my take on it. What's your experience? Because I know I trust your ballistic knowledge a whole lot more than
Well, the heavy bullet thing, on a lung shot, yeah, probably just poke a little hole in, a little hole out. But if you happen to hit a shoulder or something like that, then it's gonna be
like a grenade.
Yeah, it's not gonna be pretty.
Right.
The bullets that I have found the best for the least amount of fur damage is I really like that 55 grain Sierra pointed soft point.
Okay.
There's actually two of them. There's a flat base one, and then there's also the boat tail. And I have had great luck with them in the 224 Valkyrie, and then Joe shoots them in the 55 in the 22-250, and them are very fur friendly, and they kill excellent. That is the best bullet I've found for saving hides.
Okay.
If you hit them on the edge, like in the backbone or something like that, yeah, it's going to tear them up.
Right.
But most of my coyotes I shoot are quartering towards me. They're coming to that call and they're kind of quartering towards me. And I have had with the lighter plastic tip bullets, like the ballistic tips or Hornady VMAX, ones with the plastic tip, and like the 55 grain nozzle or ballistic tip. Excellent bullet, kills them great. But I have had on that quarter towards me shot, I have hit them in the shoulder and had that bullet blow up underneath the shoulder, and then you got about a 4 or 5 inch piece of hair missing behind that shoulder, and a lot of times it won't penetrate into the rib cage,
Right.
and the coyote just spins in circles biting at his shoulder. You got to put another bullet in him.
Right.
And I also ran into that with 77 grain tipped Match Kings Sierras in that 224 Valkyrie.
Really?
So yes,
You'd think a heavier bullet would have had better penetration.
I think that jacket is too thin on
Okay.
that, and it expands too quick. It's what I'm thinking is happening. That plastic tip starts that expansion so fast
Which is what it's supposed to
that,
do.
yep, and it's just not penetrating. It's
Okay.
just blowing right up on the shoulder there. So and my 55 grain Sierras, pointed soft points, have never done that, and I've shot lots and lots of coyotes with them, and I've never had that happen.
Now, do you ever use a hollow point bullet?
I have in that 6 SBC. That is, it's actually a 6.8 SBC nick down to 6mm, and I shot I don't know, I think about 18 coyotes with 70 grain spear TNTs, which are a hollow point.
Mhm.
Worked great.
Really?
Yes, that really worked good. But then I wanted to try the 70 grain nozzle or ballistic tip, which is a plastic tip bullet, but I think the extra weight and they're stronger constructed. I have not had that shoulder problem with them,
Okay.
and they kill great too, but they're a little harder on the hide. Now I've been playing with that gun recently with some 58 grain VMAX,
Mhm.
and I'm getting great accuracy with them, and they're shooting just shy of 3,500.
That's hustling pretty good.
Yeah, for that little cartridge,
Yeah.
yes, and
And that's what, 18-inch barrel?
nope, that's 22
Oh,
inch. barrel.
22? Okay.
So I'm gonna, when I switch back to that gun, I'm gonna try them 58 grain VMAXs and see how they do on the coyote.
I've killed
Oh.
one coyote with a 58 grain VMAX on my 6mm Remington, and it worked great.
You're getting a lot more velocity
Right,
there.
yeah.
You're probably shooting 38.
I don't think
3900.
I've ever chronoed it,
Yeah,
but yeah, it's probably hustling pretty
yeah, it would
good.
be pretty bad. But yeah, I'm really liking that 6mm SBC.
Are you gonna try and shoot a deer with that this year?
I might. I have some 85 grain Sierra, the hollow points. I think they're a Game King.
Mhm.
Yeah, Game King. Bullets loaded up for it. They're very accurate in that gun. I'm getting seemed like it was seemed like 2,900 and something feet per second. So it's fairly
Respectable,
decent.
yeah.
Yeah.
When you do your load development, do you, like myself, I really could care less about the velocity. I'm looking for the accuracy. Other guys like to push the envelope on the velocity. So when you're developing a load, what is it that you're looking for? You're looking for a happy medium, you're looking for fast, you're looking for accurate,
If
combination of all of them?
if it's a hunting load, I like the velocity to be up there.
Okay,
And of course, I want the accuracy too.
right.
I'm usually up fairly close to maximum. I would I'll give up a little bit of accuracy for a little more speed, as long as it's not too much. But
Okay.
but I want in a gun that I hunt coyotes with, a nighttime gun. I'd like that gun to shoot under an inch, 5-shot groups.
That was gonna be my next question.
Yeah, a lot of people like to shoot 3-shot groups. It's a lot easier to get lucky with a 3-shot group than a 5-shot group.
Right.
I noticed you shoot a lot of 4-shot groups, which that's kind of in between. I mean, it's going to show you more than a 3-shot group. I think a lot of people will shoot a 3-shot group and they'll get lucky and get one group and they think their gun will do that every time.
Right.
Well, it won't.
Right.
I mean, those guns are, especially a hunting type rifle. 5-shot group will really weed out
Right.
the inaccuracy.
That and trying it all different times of the year too.
Right. Yep. You got different temperatures, which changes your load
Yeah.
considerably.
Yeah.
But yeah, my coyote rifles, I like them to shoot inch group or
Okay.
5-shot group, but I don't always get that. Now, like my 224 Valkyrie, in reality, it's probably 1.25 inches. You'll get some 3/4 inch 5-shot groups, but you'll get some 1.25 inch ones too. Which is not bad. I mean,
Right.
that for a hunting rifle, especially an AR, that's pretty respectable. Now this 6 SBC, it seems to be a little bit better, a little more accurate.
What would you say right now in terms of your hunting rifles is your most accurate one?
My deer rifles or
Hunting in general.
Well, as you know, I've got a couple of 6 BBCs that 6.5 Creedmoors that I just put aftermarket barrels on. I've had them guns shoot me some. I've had some groups, 5-shot groups in the threes, 300 and some thousand, under 3/8 of an inch. Like one 5-shot group I shot with that Bergara the other day with the Criterion barrel on it. That was in the low 4s, 5-shot group.
I wanted to ask you about that. Have you been able to spend much time with that since you got back?
I have since we got back from bear hunting. I've been playing with that, and yeah, I'm happy with it.
Good.
The other day I was shooting at 500 yards, and my that 600 Remington that's got the Bartland barrel on it. I shot a 3-shot group at 500 yards. It was 1 inch.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice.
I think there was a little luck involved there, but I'll take it.
Right.
And the Bergara I shot at 500 yards that day, and it shot 4-inch group, which is at 500 yards. I'm not going to complain about that.
In your 6.5 class guns that you shoot, have you ever shot the 100 grain nozzle ballistic tip?
Not in those. Not in these 2 that I got going right now. No. I shot some of. I did have which I gave to my oldest daughter Jackie. I had a Ruger American Predator, and I put it in the Boyd's that one stock, and I had shot him in that. I've used that 100 grain nozzle ballistic tip quite a bit in my 6.5 Grendel.
Okay.
Actually, I shot the one bear with that.
Yep. Was that the 100 grains?
Yep, that was 100 grain ballistic tip. I shot that.
I couldn't remember if it was the 100 or 120.
And then I shot a fair amount of coyotes with that bullet.
Okay.
I really like the 107 Sierras
Tip
match Kings in that 6.5 Grendel, but I got about 40 of them left, and they seem to be non-existent.
Just like most bullets now, unfortunately.
Actually, Sierra's supposed to come out with some 105 105 grain those tipped Blitz Kings for the 6.5.
Really?
Yeah, I guess they sell them in some of their factory shells.
Okay.
And now they're going to make the bullets available.
That'd be worth a shot to try.
I think it'd be an excellent bullet in the Grendel.
I was really surprised that triple I shot this weekend where I got the 2 with 1 shot.
Yeah, that was great.
I was really surprised when I walked up on him because the first coyote, you couldn't even see an entrance and exit. Nothing. On the second coyote, you had a clear entrance and exit. So the first coyote, it went right through the boiler room.
But the first one is the one that run a little ways, right?
That dropped like a rock.
Oh, I thought that was the back one that dropped.
The back one ran. First one dropped like a rock. So the second one, the first one was perfect broadside right through the boiler room. The second one was a quartering. It entered just behind the front shoulder, but exited probably. There was actually like some lung material and stuff like that coming out of the hole where it exited on that one. But it really kind of surprised me that that bullet didn't open up on the first one. I would have thought it would have. I mean, maybe I didn't hit any bone. I didn't skin it to see, but it really kind of surprised me. On the second one, it definitely opened up. But on the first one, it didn't look like that bullet opened up at all, or very little if it did.
How far away was it?
Almost 300 yards. It's like 200.
Yeah, you're you're not got a lot of velocity out there
Right.
at that range.
And then,
Grendel.
of course, the one they shot at 66 yards, the first one, that put a hole probably about the size of a softball in it. I hit that one right in the neck.
I think them 100 grain Noslers in the 6.5 are, I think they're kind of a tough little bullet.
I worked good on those hogs down in Louisiana.
Yeah, I think it'd be a good deer bullet in that 6.5.
Yeah, I think
Grendel.
it would be too. Matter of fact, I might use that one this year. Well, I don't know if I did, I'd probably change scopes, or I'd be shooting deer with a thermal, and then get people accusing me of shooting them at night if I use a thermal.
It's legal.
It is legal,
Not
right?
shoot them at dark,
Right.
but
Yeah,
I mean,
it's legal to use a thermal during the day.
Yeah, as long as you legal shooting time.
Right. But I know, I mean, I like the 95 grain VMAX in that Grendel. I killed my deer with a 95 grain VMAX in my 260 last year, and I was surprised how well that worked. I took your advice on it. I talked to you about it first. Said, what do you think? And you said you think it'd work good. And by gosh, it worked great. I've used a 90 grain Varmageddon, which that one was kind of 50-50 in terms of being quote unquote fur friendly. It shot good. But again, on Fox, it was horrible. But my last bobcat I shot was a frontal shot. Cat was sitting down facing me. I drilled it right in the chest, and I just remember walking up to that thinking I'm gonna have one huge hole in it. That bullet never exited. It was perfect.
Them cats are a pretty tough little critter. I mean, as long as that bullet didn't come out, I think it'd take it pretty good.
The first bobcat I shot with a 223 using a 60 grain Nosler ballistic tip. That's the last. No, I shot one more animal with that, but that cat was probably about 75 yards. The bullet went in, again, it was sitting down, went in front of the shoulder, exited the opposite rear end, like in the ham, exited. That bullet never opened up. And that cat jumped a little bit and then just took off like a shot. It ran into some brush, and I heard it make a bunch of noise, and I ended up recovering it the next day because I couldn't find it that night. And then I shot one coyote with that same load at almost 200 yards, and it went through the neck, never opened up. I had to put a second round in that coyote. So I quit using that in my 223, went to the 55 grain VMAX. But since then, I've heard they've reconstructed that bullet.
Well, is that a short barrel?
16-inch.
Yeah, you'll find you're not getting enough velocity to make that bullet expand. Probably not a real hot load either, huh?
I'm using 26 grains of WC846, which is similar to a VLC2.
Do you know what a chronograph?
Not off the top of my head, I don't.
I'd say you're probably not getting a lot of velocity out of it. Of course, that cat wasn't very far away, it doesn't sound like,
right.
But did you bought some of the regular Hornady bullets, didn't you?
I did soft points.
Yeah,
I did recently, and I'm gonna be.
You ain't shot
I haven't developed a load for them yet. I'm gonna try the same powder charge and see what I get for results out of it and accuracy. And if then I won't, if as long as it's shooting good, I won't have to tweak it. I'll just run the same load. But I want to tweak a load in for that because I haven't been able to find VMAX.
I think you'll find them will probably kill coyotes and stuff a little better than the VMAX.
Yeah, I think we talked about that before because it's a little bit more solid. It's gonna have more consistent expansion. It won't be quite as rapid, so you should get better penetration.
A lot of these varmint bullets, especially in your 22 caliber, are made for woodchuck sized animals or prairie dog or something like that, and when you get into a coyote that's 30 pounds, 35 pounds, a little bit bigger animal than they're really intended for. I think that's my thought. The plastic tips on there are great to initiate expansion, but on coyote sized animal, I think it initiates it a little too fast.
Yeah. So speaking of which, I know you said a lot of your shots you have are front quartering shots on coyotes. Where's your preferred aiming point on a coyote?
Right when he's quartering towards me, I'll put it right at the tip of his shoulder.
Okay.
I
What about broadside?
Yeah, I'll shoot him right through the shoulder, or just right tight.
And see, I think
back of the shoulder.
I think that is a lot. You see a lot of people squawk about, well, I've shot so many with this and they all run or they all spin and do that. To me, I think there may be some merit to bullet performance, but I think a lot of it is shot placement.
Most of it is shot placement. Yeah.
And what I've told a lot of people that ask is I say, put it right on their shoulder. Don't aim like you do a deer where you go behind the shoulder. Put it right on their shoulder.
Now, if you're using like a lighter VMAX and 22 caliber or a lighter nozzle or ballistic tip in 22 caliber, you might want to avoid that heavy shoulder bone.
Okay.
Because it may not
get the penetration.
May not get into the rib cage.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of people when they got it quartered to them, they'll try to shoot behind that shoulder. Well, you're probably going to miss the lung and you're going to gut shoot them.
Yep.
So yeah, they're going to run. They're a tough animal.
Oh, very tough. Amazingly tough. Sometimes.
You shoot them just on a lung hit, and I don't care if you shoot them with a deer rifle. Good chance they're going to run.
Mm-hmm.
They ain't going to live, but
right.
They're going to run a little ways.
Oh yeah,
that's the same way with a deer. I mean, you got that deer broadside, and you shoot him in the lungs. More than likely, he's going to run. I mean, it's if you don't hit the spine or the brain or something like that on a deer, more than likely it's going to run.
Right.
Maybe not far, probably, but it's going to go.
It's like when I shot that deer with my 260 last year, I actually shot that deer just in front of the shoulder and it exited out the opposite side. And when I shot that deer, that was, I want to say it was like 240 yards, I think it was. That deer actually ran towards us. Well, my partner, Mike, was with me, and he was watching in the thermal when I shot that deer. And it started running towards us. And of course, I'm thinking, okay, I got to get ready for a follow-up shot. He's like, holy cow, you smoked that deer. I'm like, what? It is running, And I'm like, he says, I can see blood just spraying out of that thing. And as it ran towards us, I was staying on it in case I had to give it another shot. I could see blood coming on both sides. And it ran towards us, staggered a bunch, almost went down, then ended up getting the last burst of energy and ran into the woods, but it only went like 10, 15 yards into the woods. But I mean, like you said, it ran and it was spraying blood like nobody's business. Yeah. But yeah, it's amazing how tough these animals can be sometimes. Fox, coyotes, bobcats, deer, all of them. I mean, they have a crazy will to live, and if you don't have the right shot placement, they're gonna run.
Yep.
And I like I said, I think a lot of times that's what the issue is with people, that they blame it on the gun or the cartridge, but I think a lot of it's shot placement. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, it's mostly shot placement. I mean, you hit that shoulder, and more than likely they're going to go down.
Now, one thing that's been really nice as of lately is the scopes that have the rangefinder built into them, or you can use in conjunction with one. Now, you have an LRF on a pulsar, correct?
Yep. And my scanner, pulsar scanner, also has.
Yep. And I'm running the ABL on my Thor, and I think also as well, because that's one thing that's really hard at night, is judging distance. And I think people make so many mistakes on that, judging their distance, that results in, bad shots or misses or whatever. And being able to know that range, and of course you have to know what your rifle's going to do at those ranges. And that's something I always tell people too. They'll say, oh, well, it should be, this high at this range. I'm like, take it to the range and prove it. Then you'll know for sure, and there won't be any second guessing. You'll make your shots count. So having that rangefinder on there, to me, makes a huge difference.
It does. That's a good deal that they're starting to put the rangefinders on there. With the thermals, it's impossible to tell how far that stuff is out there. I mean, those thermals are so good that guy can be out there 300-400 yards, and I mean, you see him good.
Oh yeah.
The digital night vision, when they get out there at 300 yards, they start to get pretty dim out there. But these thermals, it's just, you see so good.
Right.
But yeah, that distance, it gets you, and then too, I think a lot of people might shoot over them. They think it's a lot farther than it actually is, and so they're aiming high, and a lot of these rifles are pretty flat. But yeah, it's definitely a hard game out there, really.
It is. It's funny too because I think I was actually on the Fox Pro forums here not too long ago, and one of the guys that's been on there forever got on there, and he starts going off on thermal hunting. Oh, it's not fair. It's easy. It's blah blah blah, going on and on. I'm like, you still have to call them. You still have to make the shot. You still have to set up to get them. It's not like it does everything for you. I mean, back when tournaments were going on and thermal started getting really popular, they were talking about, matter of fact, I think there was a couple of tournaments that said no thermals allowed. And, I argued the point. I said, thermal's great. Don't get me wrong, but you still have to call them in. You still have to do your part. It's not an automatic gimme just because you have a thermal. It helps.
Well, yeah, like we said before, if you got a thermal scanner and a night vision scope, I mean, you'll kill just about as many coyotes as having the thermal scope and thermal scanner. There's not a big difference, really. But that, getting back on that thermal scanner, for deer hunting, that thing's great to take for deer hunting in the daytime too. The one time I had my thermal scanner and it's good light, and I'm looking out there. There's 3 deer standing over the edge of the woods. I take that thing down. And I
can't see them.
Where are they? They must have run. And I look back through the thermal. Yeah, they're right there. And I pick up the binoculars, and they must have took off. And I look back in the thermal. They're right there. I had a heck of a time finding them things in them binoculars. So eventually, I finally found them. But that thermal was showing them to me as plain as day.
Right, especially if they're just inside a wood line or in any brush.
And then too, for recovering deer, I love that thermal scanner. I found a lot of deer with that thermal scanner. So anybody that's got a thermal scanner, they're not taking it deer hunting. They're
missing out.
They are.
Yep, I agree. It's funny because I think I take my
squirrel hunting. That thing would be great for squirrel hunting.
I haven't thought about that. But yeah, that would probably work really good.
Oh, real good.
Probably work good for coon hunting too.
Probably.
Get them up in the trees. Spot them with that.
You just walk out there in the woods and you start scanning around. You're seeing chipmunks running all over the place.
Mice or whatever.
You don't see them, but you see them in that scanner.
Yeah. The only thing I found is sometimes when you're looking up at the sky, you tend to get a little bit of washout.
Yeah, in the tree, I've noticed that before. Looking up in the trees, it can be hard to spot stuff. But for like spotting squirrels on the ground in the woods, it's fantastic.
Right. So, when you zero your rifles in for hunting, what range do you zero them in at?
I like to have them set up so they're usually on at 200. It depends on the
cartridge
setup.
Okay.
For like coyote hunting, I like it. I don't have a 200-yard range. I can set up and shoot in the field at 200 yards, but right there at home I only have a 100-yard range. So I'll try to get most of my rifles so they're shooting about an inch high at 100. And of course, there's a lot of variables, like on the AR with that scope mounted so high, that makes them actually seem like they're shooting a lot flatter.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I'll usually try to get them so they shoot about an inch high. My coyote rifle, I never have it so it's hitting right on the crosshair at 100 yards. I've always wanted a little bit high.
Okay.
Now, like these 6.5 Creedmoors, I got it set up for deer hunting. Them are for longer ranges, and I'll have them right on the money at 100 yards, and then that way I know with my dope that I don't adjust the turret for like 400 or 500 yard shot. They have mill dots in them.
Okay.
And I aim high with the mill dots, but I line them guns up right on 100 yards. But now, like a deer rifle that don't have mill dots in the scope, I'll line that up so it's hitting about on at 200.
Okay. So then I've seen you make some really dandy shots. What's the furthest shot you've made on a coyote so far?
In the dark, I think we're right around 408 yards or something like that in the dark. That was with my Grendel.
Okay.
I shot it that one year. I shot a couple of them out there about that range with that Grendel. I shot them in the daylight I shot one at 425 in the daylight out in Oklahoma, and that was with my 7mm 08
Okay,
rested over a hay bale.
nice. Now your deer rifles, I know you've made some really good shots on deer too. I mean, you've shot some deer out to
Well, right now the farthest deer I shot was like 498,
really.
but
Was that with the 6 Creed,
6.5.
6.5 Creed?
Yep.
130 grain bullet.
That was actually 142
Okay.
Sierra Match King.
Okay.
This year I plan on deer hunting with that Vergara with the Criterion barrel. I'm going to use the 140 ELD match
Mm-hmm.
and that 600 Remington with the Bartland barrel. I'm going to shoot the 140 Burger VLD.
Okay.
I'd like to use burgers in that other one too, but I can't get them.
Mm-hmm.
They're not the burger not hunting bullets are not existent.
Yeah, I'm finding that with a lot of stuff right now. It's just harder and heck to find, and people keep saying it's getting better, but I haven't seen much.
Yeah,
That's getting
I've
better.
not seen that. That 1-inch group that I shot at 500 yards with that 600 Remington with the Bartland barrel, that was with the 130 Sierra Tip Match King,
Really?
and I might try them on deer too. I really like that bullet.
What's the difference between the Tip Match King versus like the Game Changer? Do you know?
The Game Changer is a thicker jacket.
Okay, that's why I thought maybe a little bit thicker constructed.
Yeah, my thoughts are on these longer range bullets. You want something with a thinner jacket so it can come apart easier.
Okay.
Up close, then you want the thicker, tougher bullet. But you get out there 500, 600, 700 yards, you don't really have a lot of velocity there.
Right. So you're less likely to get expansion if you have a tougher constructed bullet.
Yeah. Probably, I don't know what Sierra says, but something like that 130 Tip Game King, that probably needs something 1,800 or above feet per second, whereas the Tip Match King, it'll probably expand yet down to 1,600.
Okay.
So, it's just kind of a range thing. I watch a lot of the expansion tests that Barber Creek shooting school. They have videos on there where they shoot these bullets in the ballistic gels out at a lot of times out 8,000-9,000 yards.
Really?
Yeah, and they really love the burgers.
Mm-hmm.
But they talk highly of the ELD match too. They say it's almost like the burger out there at long range.
That's one thing too that a lot of people don't understand is that bullets react different based on the velocity. And I think most of the time your predator hunters, especially nighttime hunters, you're not shooting much more past 200 yards to begin with.
No, most of them are within
right
that.
But when you talk like deer, if you're out west hunting or something like that, the bullet isn't going to react the same at 100 yards as it is at 300 or 400 yards.
That's the problem the bullet manufacturers have to make the perfect bullet, because you're using the same bullet in different cartridges, where like the 6.5 bullets, you might be using it in a Grendel that's shooting 2,500 feet per second muzzle velocity, or you may be shooting it in one of these big 6.5 magnums where
right 6.5 Weatherby.
yeah, and here this thing shooting 3,300 feet per second.
Right.
So it's pretty hard to get a bullet to work at both velocities. Right. And then too, you shoot a deer at 50 yards, that bullet's going to expand really quick. But if you shoot him out there at 500 yards,
put a pinhole through him.
Yeah, so it's pretty hard to make the perfect bullet. Right. With these bonded bullets, the bonded bullets has actually got a little softer jacket on them, I believe, and so they actually do expand at slower velocities. Okay. But yet the jacket really sticks to the lead good, so right. They stay together. The jacket and stuff don't separate. on there, so they stay together a little bit better, but they also expand a little quicker, so that's a little better. But bonded bullets a lot of times aren't as accurate.
Yeah. I haven't played around with a lot. I know in my 300 Win Mag, I like the Hornady Interbond, which is a bonded bullet. But I have yet to shoot any game with it yet. I tell you what, I've, for a long time, that 300 was going to be my gun for everything. But anymore, it sits in the safe a lot.
Yeah.
Put it that way. I mean, I've been really impressed with the Grendel, the 260. I can't see really a whole lot that I do that they won't work good for.
You don't need to burn all that powder and get kicked that hard to kill that stuff. I mean, I as a young guy, I love magnums. I love my 7mm mag, and I love magnums. I bought a 8mm Remington Magnum, which for people that don't know, that's 375 H&H Magnum case blown out.
Really, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, they're huge case.
I was gonna say I have a 375 H&H case up there, so I know what you're talking about.
Well, yeah, the 8mm Magnum holds more powder because the shoulder's all blown out on it.
Ouch.
But anyway, I love my Magnums as a young guy, but anymore, I don't use the Magnums at all. They set in the safe. I don't.
Yeah.
You don't need it to kill that little 6.5 Grendel. I mean, that's a little bitty shell, and I mean, you can kill anything we got here in Michigan with it,
Yeah.
just fine. So, people badmouth 6.5 Creedmoor, but I think that's a fantastic deer cartridge. I mean,
it's really popular for it right now.
It don't have the greatest velocity, but they're high ballistic coefficiency bullets, so it holds its velocity good.
And there really is a lot of variety of bullets in that diameter too. I mean, you can go everything from down to like an 85 all the way up to like 160 in the 6.5.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's a big selection of bullets. And it don't kick you hard.
No,
it's not a barrel burner. It's good for 2,000 rounds. The barrel is, where these magnums you might be down to 900 to 1,000.
Right.
So it's a nice little cartridge. Last year I shot a bunch of deer with that 6mm Creedmoor, and I shot them out close to 400 yards, and that 6mm, and with the Berger 105 grain Berger, and I had fantastic results with that gun. Yeah, anymore I don't need to get kicked that hard. I told you earlier I was out shooting that 450 Marlin I shot 3 times just to see. I thought, well, man, I might want to take that deer hunting this year, and I've got 300 grain Hornady bullets loaded in that, and I think they're almost 2,300, or yeah, I think they're 22 something anyway. It's fairly hot load in that 450 Marlin, but that little gun, that thing kicks terrible.
Oh yeah, lightweight gun, probably has a steel butt plate on it or plastic butt plate on it.
I think it's got a recoil pad. Well, it's even got a ported barrel, so
it's loud on top of it.
Yeah, I shot that thing 3 times, and I thought, I don't think I'm going to be hunting with it.
Right, it'll put you back in the safe now. You're
good.
It's
such I really like that little gun. It's such a cute little gun, but man, that thing kicks terrible.
So did you see that? Well, Ruger bought Marlin and H&R. Yep. Did you see that they're releasing their first lever action under the Ruger name now?
Yep, I seen that, and I also seen that they've produced the first Remington 870. The people that bought that, Rim Arms.
Really?
Yep.
I heard that was going to be their first one, but I didn't see that they released it.
I seen it in a hunting magazine here recently. They made their first one.
Now, one thing I read about that new Ruger is their first one they're coming out with the 4570, the guide gun basically, but they're going away from the Marlin micro groove barrel to their traditional barrel, and they say so far they're getting really good accuracy results with it.
Well, now my I almost believe my 450 Marlin had the Ballard rifle in it. Yeah.
Okay.
And that was one of them that was made, one of the last ones made by Marlin.
Okay.
Which that's the copy of that 450 Marlin. That's the guide gun.
Right.
But yeah, I'm happy to see Ruger.
I think they'll do a good job with them. I hope they come back with a single shot and they do it good too. Because
Yeah.
that's one thing there isn't much on the market of right now is a good single shot.
No.
And I mean, the H&Rs were marginal, to be honest.
Yeah,
So-
I was thinking when you said good single shot, I was
Right.
thinking, well,
Well, I
H&R
mean,
didn't make none.
really about the best single shot out there right now is a Thompson Center. I would think.
Well, that Ruger.
Well, the Ruger #1.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
them are very expensive.
Right.
Um,
But hopefully they can maybe come back and do something with like that NEF or H&R partner line or the handy rifle line and make something good out of
do
that.
they have intentions of making them?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think there's a niche there that they could fill though if they decided to.
There is one company that is it Rossi or somebody is making one. I don't know how good.
Yeah,
they are, but-
Rozzy is, in my opinion,
Yeah.
they're worse than the H&Rs and NEFs.
Oh
put it
boy,
that way.
they are bad. Then.
Yeah.
I don't have a very high opinion of them H&R single
And
shots.
to be honest with you, I don't even know if the Rozzies are still around anymore, but I know they were popular there for a while because they were so cheap. Now CVA does have a single shot,
Yep.
and I've sold a couple of those, and the reports on them were kind of mixed. I mean, they said they shot okay and all that, but the ones that I handled felt kind of cheap. They weren't as cheap as a Rozzy, but they weren't as refined as some of the nicer H&Rs either. Like the brake action lever on it just felt cheap, but the guys that got them seemed to like them.
Yeah.
But I mean, they were really popular there for a little while because they had them in the 450 Bushmaster and the 350 Legend. I sold a couple of each of those, and the guys that got them like them, but I don't know. I don't think they were quite as good as some of the other offerings that were out there.
Now that 350 Legend, that seems to be fairly popular right now, hasn't it? I
Yep.
mean, for no longer has been out.
Right. I know, well, Josh has one, which that really surprised the heck out of me. I don't know if you've seen that or not, but Josh shot 3 coyotes with his.
I did see that.
And he was shooting 180 grain Winchester Super X. And he said none of those bullets exited those coyotes.
What size bullet was it?
180 grain.
Must be.
It's a soft point. And he says they didn't exit those coyotes.
They
that-
killed him.
Oh yeah, it killed them deader than a doornail, but didn't exit. That just surprised me because I would have thought
How
that
far away?
I want to say around 100 yards.
Oh. Have you shot one of them?
I have.
Not much recoil. Was
No, they're not bad.
it? Was it AR you shot?
Yep.
or- oh,
I haven't shot any in a bolt action or anything else yet, just the ARs. And like I said, they shot good. The recoil, it's more than the Grendel, but it's still not. It's nothing like the 450s. I think have more recoil, and then definitely have less recoil than like the 50 Beowulf. But I mean, they're not bad. I mean, they're
For-
comfortable to shoot.
For the Southern Michigan deer hunters, this straight wall cartridge thing, that's been a really, that's a big advancement for
Oh,
them,
yeah.
really. I never hunt in that area,
Right.
but if I did, that I'd be after one of those.
There was a recent DNRC meeting that they live streamed through MUCC, I think it was. And there was a guy on there, and I can't remember his name, but he says he works with several big gun manufacturers and gun magazines. And he was trying to convince him to do something about the straight wall cartridge zone because he said they're going to be coming out with straight wall cartridges now that will perform as good as some of your big 30 caliber rounds.
As long as they stay with that 1.8 maximum case length, they can't. I mean,
Right, and it has
I
to be
guess they-
straight wall. It can't be tapered or bottleneck. It
they
has to
could
be
go up
straight.
to 50 caliber or 54 or whatever, but I mean, you're still not going to have the ballistic because
No.
they're going to drop like pumpkins.
Yeah, it's gonna be a rainbow.
Yeah, so I think I would disagree with that.
He says he swears because he's been testing them, so we'll see, I guess.
I guess maybe if
Well,
it-
he said it would compete with them with like a 30 cal, because he was talking about. He says they're gonna outperform the 350 and the 450 on these new cartridges they got coming out.
but if they went to a Sabo, you might be able to.
That's
Yeah, better,
that's
but-
an interesting thought.
But is that legal?
I don't know.
Probably is. I don't know.
That's an interesting thought.
But I put scopes on and lined up a couple of the 450, the Ruger Americans, that other camel, what do they call that? Go Wild.
Mhm.
here recently, and they were nice shooting rifles.
I've
Um,
the biggest thing I've heard with the 450 is some guys really don't like the performance of like the Hornady Black. I've had some guys say they really liked it. Other guys said they didn't have good success with it. Now, like there's a guy named Elliot. He started using. He had problems with the Hornady Black. He went to a company called Butterfly or something. I think it's a hollow point in the 450, and he says that performs really well.
the only thing I could see would maybe that plastic tip's starting the expansion too quick.
And I don't think they hold together.
Are they? It's not, but a deer is not really that thick through.
Right. But like even with my bear, I shot with my 45-70. That was with what 325 grain FTX. You found the jacket of that bullet the year after, laying by the.
It was old bullet, wasn't it?
No, it was just the jacket. I still got it up here.
Yeah, that was a year later.
Yeah.
Later, found it laying on the ground up there where you shot it. But,
Yeah. But I think the actual we had an exit on that bear. I know that, but I just don't think it. Of course, bear usually don't get a lot of blood anyway to begin with, from what I've seen.
But you know, like that bear I shot this year, that was a bonded bullet. That was a 140 grain spear gold dot, which I think that's a fantastic bullet. And that went through that shoulder of that bear, and it was just sticking in the ribs on the other side. So,
right,
you know, I think the bear might be a fairly tough animal.
Well, the bullet got slowed down by about a foot worth of fat too.
Well, yeah, they had to go through. Probably not much fat on that shoulder though.
Right.
But
I think there was fat on that whole bear that was thick. Like
I was surprised that didn't go through that bear, but evidently that shoulder must have took a lot out of that bullet, because out of that 260, and then we're shooting 2,600 feet per second, which it ain't bad muzzle velocity out of that 260 with a 140 grain bullet.
Right. And your shot, you weren't far away from muzzle velocity.
50, I think 57 yards.
Yeah. So you didn't shed much velocity in that range.
No. But I was just surprised it didn't go on through, but
right.
It done the job.
Oh yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for joining me tonight, Randy.
Well, thanks for having me.
I appreciate it. We'll have to get out and do some hunting again. And of course, we all follow along with your adventures.
Yeah.
Everyone likes watching your stuff.
Well, most everyone.
Well, yeah. Right. We won't go into that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's time to start killing deer now. So coyote hunting's going to take the back seat here for a little bit.
Go on hold for a couple of months.
I plan on getting out a little bit for this next 10 days before the
so here's a question for you. Will you do any hunting during the quiet time?
No, because I gotta use a rimfire, and I don't
the heck with that rimfire.
Yeah, I don't. If I don't load the shell for it, I don't want to use it. So that quiet time will be a quiet time for me. Right. But I'll probably get out a little bit during deer season, not too much, but
depends on how fast you fill your tags.
Yeah. That probably won't. I'll try to make them last through the whole season. But you know, anymore, I like the coyote hunting better than anything. So
I almost hate to tell people that, because then they're like, oh, maybe I should try it. But at the same time, I completely agree. You know, it used to be I love deer hunting, but anymore, I don't know, maybe it's just shorter attention span or what. But I mean, you don't have to spend as much time not doing anything when
it's not as boring.
Right.
I mean, you're standing out there and you're spinning in circles looking 360 degrees the whole time. You ain't just sitting there staring out
right
across the field or something, but it's just not as boring.
Right.
And then too, you get to shoot more often. That is, if you're successful at calling them in.
Right.
Sometimes it goes in streaks where you don't call much in.
Right now, for a lot of people, that's getting in the danger zone, because they might not be able to get more ammo.
I know it. That's a bad situation right there.
Yes, it is.
I see Brownells had some small rifle primers here recently, and they were, I think they were $79.99 $1,000.
Wow. That's better than it was.
I guess it's better than none at all. But,
Right.
Uh,
I just had a guy come in here a couple of weeks ago. I had some 280 Remington ammo, I think it was. Or yeah, I think it was 280 Remington, which I don't know anybody that shoots that cartridge. And this old timer came in and says, I love that round. He says, you got some ammo? I said, yeah, I got 2 boxes of it. He says, I'll tell you what, I'll trade you a brick of primers for it. I said, done deal. Bring it over. So he came over and I traded him 2 boxes of ammo that I'd probably never ever use in my life for a brick of primers that I will use.
I have a 280.
Do you?
Ruger model, old Tang safety Ruger model 77.
Really?
Nice rifle.
But you hand load for it, so
Yeah, well, it ain't been shot in years.
Right. All right. Well, we'll call it good for the night. Thank you, sir.